I'd like to introduce Helen Yaknegrin. I had to practice that. Director of Supplier Quality and Development for GKN Aerospace, who's going to talk a little bit about the actual 100 standard.
Yeah, the clicker, please. And you can hear me, I hope. Yes, yes. Well, the problem is that I'm from Sweden. So my last name is a Swedish last name. We are 4 in the world with that last name. Jäkegren, is it is? The air there, we use a lot. And we use it in one sentence that our president usually say. It shall be easy to do the right thing. Det ska vara lätt att göra rätt. Just that, there. It shall be easy to do right. And I'm going to talk about the 13100 standard today. That is really all about it shall be more easy. It's the content easy? No. But it's intended to be more the same. So actually all of us can focus on doing the right thing and doing what it intends to give us instead of desperately trying to find the right sentence in the right document. I can just guess that you're all delivering to more than one OEM without knowing. At GKN Aerospace, we deliver to all the OEMs. So we have a lot of papers to read. So it has been very important for us to be a voting member of AESQ since, I think, 8 years back, and to give the input both as a supplier, but also as being a designing partner for many of our OEMs. So let's go in the right direction. Okay. We're going to repeat a lot today. But I think we need that because we get a lot of questions. So as you understand, we had the old documents from our OEMs before, the Sabre 3 and the AESQ R1 Rev 10 or whatever it was, and the other ones. And we took all of them, put them together, and harmonized the requirements. That means, in simple words, that if you were following the requirements for Sabre 3, you are approximately like, at least, I think, 80% according to the requirements today. It's just that the actual wording have changed document. What we also did was, as you saw before, there are some OEM unique requirements. We're going to come back to kind of why they are unique and what kind they are. But there are some that we couldn't kind of really align. And we really hope for the future we can align more. But this is what we have now in the first revision. We also had some existing standards. You have heard of 13004 perhaps, or 3 or 2. These documents we already have had out there. And we also had some work ongoing. So we also took all of that. And we put the shells of that into the 13100 standard. So once again, if you were compliant to the requirements before, you are very much probably compliant to the requirements now, with some changes that we're going to talk about. As we also said several times, we have reference manuals, and they are all the yummy things that will help you understand and deploy this in a good way. It's a lot of slides and a lot of information, but take some time and read them. They are intended to help you, and they are the best of the best from our different OEMs on how to do stuff. So these went into the reference manuals. We have the standard. We have also the add-ons from the OEMs or your customer. And what we have seen is that we have reduced the overall requirements by approximately 60% in these documents. I heard 80 in S1000 for GE. So it's great. It's the same requirements to vast majority. So what is then 13100 all about? And I'm going to nag about this because I often hear, or we hear as a community, I don't need to implement 13100 because it's only APQP. It is not. It is not. 13100 has 3 chapters. The first one is the requirements that you recognize from previous lives with your OEMs. So you will find probably the requirements you had before somewhere in here. It's structured according to the AS9100. So you will easily find how it's kind of, if you have an AS9100, you will see the add-ons straight into the documents, very neatly packaged. So that's chapter A. Then we have chapter B, and that is the add-on requirements for 9145, APQ, PMP, PAP. So they are in the same document, but it's two sets of requirements, and chapter B will fall in based on the customer requirements. But the baseline is that is the new black going forward. So in MPIs and so on, going forward, we're all going to use APQ, PMP, PAP. But now, in the transition world, it's according to the customer's requirements. Chapter C is the best of the best of the shells for the tools. So what is the shell for a PFME, or what is a shell for sampling, for instance? And the structure, coming back to that, is that you can see that, for instance, a chapter from 9100 is management review, and then we say, okay, we refer to 9100, and then we refer to the supplementary requirements. And this is the add-on that we put in the same chapters. One other question is often, do I need to have an AS to fulfill this? The intent is not that if you have an ISO 9001, that you shall also have a cert for 9100 if it's not recalled or needed. The intent is that you should follow the supplementary requirements. Okay? So, the customer-specific requirements, they have a content of the following. We have, of course, the reference to 13100. That's the whole thing about this. And then we have some specific documents. It could be whatever, a non-conformance report document or something that is very unique to the customer. Then we have a definition of certain customer-specific acceptance criteria that could vary slightly. And then we have the additional customer-specific requirements that is not defined. I think we have everything from requirements regarding SIOP, or it could be other things. And then define company-specific key roles. It could be how you kind of, what do you call it in English? How you assign certain persons doing certain roles. That is kind of something you granted from the OEMs. And of course, specific IT interfaces. So this is what should really be left in the unique customer requirements, and the rest is all 13,100. A very common question is kind of, how do I know what applies to me? So a very simple process for you to follow. You need to know what type of supplier you are. You can actually be several different types of supplier. Because if you know that, then you can agree with your customer, yes, I'm a raw material supplier, for instance, or I'm a made-to-print supplier. And based on that, you identify your applicable requirements. And that's in table 1. And then you deploy. Easy peasy. So an example, for instance, now in the first, this is a guidance we have in Appendix B. Do you manufacture or assemble at least one part defined by the customer, including castings and forgings? Yes or no? If yes, you're a make-to-print. Do you only manufacture or assemble finished parts produced against drawings, blah, 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 blah? Design make. So this is what you need to do to understand what type of supplier you are. There are different ones, and watch out, because now we're going to have a poll soon. So you need to know, or it would be nice if you understood that, for instance, if you're a design supplier, you work to support the OEM's design system. If you do a manufacturing drawing, you're not a design supplier. most of you guys here are probably made to print. You get the drawing from someone, and you produce according to that, and you send the part back with no defects. So when you're all done that, and you know what kind of supplier you are, you will go into something called Table 1, and here you can see that if you're a make-print supplier, then you have all the X's with all the paragraphs that applies. If you're a raw material supplier, you will see the X's here, and you can see that it's not X's there. So these paragraphs will not apply. So little tips and tricks for you to understand further that it is varying depending on what kind of products you actually supply. And you can be different type of supplier in one. So you have to think carefully about kind of what do I support to GKN or to GE or whoever. Okay, so I like you to help me respond. What kind of supplier are you, please? Well, I kind of assume that Rolls-Royce will all be in the higher category there. GKN will be in that category too. Okay. So it seems like we are, as expected, we are a lot of Rolls-Royce people with design manufacturing, and some of you are design manufacturing. And then the majority is make to print, not really surprising. And the funny category of raw material, you are one of the categories that don't have X's in that table 1. So you better read and see and understand and talk with your customer to ensure that I know what type I am and I know what applies. In reality, I mean, a big site like GKN in Trollhättan, we are kind of a lot of these, which means that our QMS actually kind of fulfills the highest level of requirements. So we kind of we don't have get out of jail card. We have all the requirements in there in our QMS. Okay, so we have talked about the benefits before, so I will be a bit quick here, but it is intended to be less complicated for all of us. Is it going to be that immediately? I don't think so. It's not easy to learn to ride a bike immediately, but when you have done it for a while, it will be quite easy. So it's just about getting up on the bike and start riding. It will sooner or later end up in a lower cost. It is extremely scrutinizing to read a lot of OEM requirements. This has helped GKN a lot, and we will continue to push for this. You have the reference manuals. You have seen that our OEMs have reduced their specific requirements. It will create a common language. There are so many ways of saying the same thing. Now we were forced to say it in the same words. It was nice to learn. It will call out the standards of the world that as much as possible. We don't want to be the oddballs here. We have training resources that we will talk more further on today. And we really see that it helps us also to talk with one voice in the supply chain through all the different levels. We will see that it helps us in compliance. And I think it will help us today when you can say, I've done my compliance assessment, I am compliant, and I can show it to whoever that knocks on my door, which kind of in the long run potentially helps you reduce the audit on site. And we can work all together to improve the capabilities of our common supply chain. It's Jim's cough, it's not COVID. So, going through the highlights. So, 13,100 includes these standards. You have seen them out there as separate standards before. Now they are included. You will see the reference manuals, and you will see trainings that is unchanged. This one will still be one separate. We will call out as many industry standards as possible. Some examples comes there. And we recognize NADCAP. One of the significant things that is changing and is added on into 13,100 is the human factor scope that is in there. This might be slightly tricky to get your arms around, but it is super important, of the sole reason that we are all human beings. But I'm the only one from Sweden. Are you awake? Yep, okay. We also made clear what certification requirements that is required for the different organizations. And we also ask you all to do the compliance assessments to make sure that I am compliant. Look here, I've done my work, I understand. And these are the areas where I don't understand. I need to talk with my customer. We have introduced 4 different audit types. And it is because we need to make sure that we use the audit tool as a really good tool amongst all the tools that we have. We have a section about auditor competence. We will talk more about the quality foundation training and other mandatory trainings in here. We also require you to have the on-the-job training for your suppliers. We talked about the common retention periods that you can find in there. We have requirements for design development and the use of design FMEAs to really get design into the APQP work. Supplier monitoring, evaluation, selection, and so on, that we can talk more about later. And not least, fraud prevention. That is a big problem for us today, and we really need all to work with. Counterfeit goods, where we call out an industry standard. Handheld spectrometry, so we shouldn't mix some material or raw material. We, of course, call out the AP problem solving, that I'm sure you all have experienced, unfortunately. And we expect you to work with the customer's feedback. Finally, Chapter B, APQP and PPAP. It will be rolled out over time. We will have a specific section about this going forward to talk more about it. But in essence, we will introduce this to new products. We will also introduce it when we have a new design change or we change a source. This Chapter B, as I said before. We have also added on some quality tools on top of 9145, like the DFMEAs and so on. So we have added a couple of more things here. We also have the additional quality tools, pre-launch control plan and supply chain risk management. And we also have defined different submission levels, which really means that you always do all the activities of APQP, but you only submit, you only kind of send in some of it to your customer to review. That's the submission level. We will spend some more time on this going forward. Time is running fast. We have the reference manuals. Again, yummy stuff. Read it. It's good things, best knowledge that is in there. And you can find it on the link. Right? AESQ, and you will get the hit immediately on AESQ on the top. And there you can find all this information. And finally, we need your feedback. We have an email here that you also can find on the homepage, where you can submit all kinds of feedback that you have. We funnel it through everything, and we put it on the Q&A section. We often hear the same questions repeat. The answers is in the Q&A section, but we need more. and not least because we are up to the challenge to actually make some changes or rewrite and put in all the knowledge that we now have gotten. So please give us feedback here, live, now you've seen some of us, so we can all together help this being a success.